we've just been going through, like, the planet is dying, what we can do about it, and now a police shooting. We've only gone through really 3 topics. And now it's time to move into the fascist propaganda and threat section. So I'm going to hydrate. Cancel student debt. We are going to actually be covering that. That would actually be a good thing to cover right now. We'll get to it later. So to kick us off on this new segment of the stream about Newsmax embracing propaganda and Trump's coup, I know some of you out there might be going like, oh, Trump didn't really stage a coup. It was just a bunch of guys coming to hang out in the Capitol. Not a big deal. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, okay? Just a bunch of guys. It'd be a shame if something happened to American democracy, but we're just some guys hanging out, you know? Well, here's some interesting thoughts from literally the head of the United States military, short of, you know, the president himself. Let's take a look, shall we? New Trump revelations underscore his undimmed danger. The most chilling implication from new reports that America's top military officer feared Donald Trump would try to order the armed forces to stage a coup is not how close the nation came to a post-election disaster last year. It's the extreme danger that the U.S. system of government, constitution, and cherished freedoms would face if an ex-president, even now trying to revive his demagogic political career, ever gets anywhere near the Oval Office again. And this is really the threat that is looming over all of us, and really one of the number one reasons why I have this Twitch channel is to try and let you all know that, hey, we need to win. Progressives need to win. Leftists and socialism need to win in this country. It's not a question of like, wow, it sure would be nice to have these things. No, it's an issue of existential right to exist. It is an existential issue. If we do not win this upcoming fight, there might not be a way for us to win in the future, okay? Because people like Donald Trump and the organisms that support him, like Newsmax, are not going to be content with simply having power. They're going to go out of their way to eliminate their enemies so that they can keep power. And that's the problem. Good night, Wordslayer. So, let's take a look here. In the latest staggering glimpse into Trump's crazed final days in office, from a flurry of new books, it emerged Wednesday that the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Mark Milley, was so shaken by Trump's refusal to concede defeat that he feared he might attempt a coup or other illegal gambit to stay in power. Milley saw himself and the armed forces as a bulwark against any presidential mutiny against the Constitution and the nearly 2.5 centuries of democratic transfers of power. They may try, but they're not going to fucking succeed, Milley told his deputies, according to excerpts from the book I Alone Can Fix It by Washington Post reporters Carol Leonig and Philip Rucker, which was obtained by CNN ahead of its release next Tuesday. Milley saw Trump as the classic authoritarian leader with nothing to lose, the authors wrote. But he told his subordinates, you can't do this without the military. You can't do this without the CIA and the FBI. We're the guys with the guns. And the thing is, he is 100% right. But the danger is that next time Donald Trump gets in power, he's not going to take members of the military to head the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He's not going to take experts from different fields to head various positions. He's not going to do these things. Instead, he's going to get his stooges into positions of power, his stooges that are 100% reliant upon him and his own goodwill, and who will not disobey him if he gives an order. Because he's learned now that, well, the head of the FBI really needs to be a loyalist for Donald Trump. The head of the CIA really needs to be a loyalist for Donald Trump. The head of the Justice Department needs to be like a complete, absolute shill for Donald Trump. And now, he knows, because of these books and press releases, that the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff literally saw him as, and I quote, a classic authoritarian leader with nothing to lose. So, he's not going to have another member of the military being the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He's just going to force his own person in there, and there's not going to be like a legal precedent for it. He's just going to do it. Yeah, he's going to get someone like Mike Flynn, someone who's totally in his pocket. So, like, when we're talking about these issues, keep in mind that we just dodged a narrow window where the aged, decrepit mechanisms of our democracy kept Donald Trump from doing the worst things that his impulses led him to. And we're not going to have that sort of restraint next time. In the end, Trump did not seek to turn the military on the American people, or stage the most alarming showdown in living memory between a modern commander-in-chief and top military brass, but that seasoned military officers thought it was a real possibility and hatched a plan for rolling resignations to thwart Trump's autocratic impulses underscores the ex-president's extraordinary instability. Their preparations raised the specter that the uniformed military was ready to act to protect democracy and the rule of law from a civilian commander-in-chief in a reversal of normal constitutional order. So, when we're talking about this, right, like, they're assuming, oh, we'll just like be able to have rolling resignations. Trump will follow the hierarchy. It'll take him a while. We'll delay him until he's out of power, and then it's going to be all good. That strategy is not going to work next time. It's not going to work next time. Next time, he's going to be in power, and he's going to put whoever the fuck he wants in power with him. What's going on with the hippy-dippy drama, Punky Gal? So he can't run again? Wait, tell me what country... Please tell me what country it has worked. I mean... Look, it's okay. Guys, it's okay to disagree with me. Well, we have democratic worker co-ops in the United States. They work really, really well. I just want more democratic worker co-ops, friend. I want federal investment in worker co-ops, and yeah, I think there's a lot of benefits to that. And I want things that can't compete in a market format to be nationalized, like electrical companies. Because, hey, let's eliminate the middleman. Let's save money for the taxpayers. And then let's not charge for electricity. I think that'd be great. Oh, okay. Punky Gal, I don't care about I don't care about Demon Mama winning or not winning the Hippy Dippy. Like, I love Demon Mama, but I don't care about the outcome of Hippy Dippy events. The most surprising revelation from Leonig and Rucker, who cite friends, lawmakers, and colleagues of Milley, was that the Joint Chiefs discussed a plan to resign one by one rather than carry out the orders of Trump that they considered to be illegal, dangerous, or ill-advised. Such a sequence would have been precipitated the most serious civil military crisis and chain of command disruption in decades, a fact that underscores how seriously the top brass took the possibility of a revolutionary moment. Literally, I don't know, guys, like how chilling it is. I think we all need to appreciate how chilling it is that the head of our military, the highest member of our military, was like, yo, Trump is an authoritarian fascist, and hey, everyone else in the military, if he orders you to do something, we all got to give up our prestigious careers and just like resign and stop him from doing stuff. Like, that is insane. That is insane, and that shows just how close we were to an absolute catastrophe, both in our politics and when it comes to violence. And now we need to talk a little bit about stochastic terrorism, because this kind of sticking to Donald Trump's narrative, this idea that he won the election, this idea that fueled the belief of the Joint Chiefs of Staff that the President of the United States was going to stage a coup to remain in power, this is now going and affecting people on the ground who believe that Donald Trump is still in power, who believe in that lie, to commit acts of terror. Now, this hasn't been really making the rounds very much today. It's been kind of a quiet story. But two men built an arsenal to firebomb California's Democratic headquarters. Two California men were so hooked by the big lie that they amassed an arsenal and planned to blow up the Democratic headquarters in Sacramento, California. Ultimately, their goal was to overthrow the government. Instead, they're in federal custody. Which is, by the way, likely why they are not headline news. According to court documents, Ian Benjamin Rogers, 45, and Jared Copeland, 37, sent Jared Copeland text messages expressing his belief that Donald Trump won the 2020 presidential election and his intent to attack Democrats and places associated with Democrats in an effort to ensure Trump remained in office. "I want to blow up a Democrat building bad," Rogers said. Copeland responded, "Plan attack." On another occasion, Rogers asked, "Do you think something is wrong with me, how I'm excited to attack the Democrats?" He expressed a desire to hit the enemy in the mouth by bombing the Democratic headquarters after Joe Biden's inauguration. Prosecutors allege he also mused about attacking the California governor's mansion. Rogers was arrested in mid-January. Authorities seized 5 pipe bombs, nearly 50 guns, and thousands of rounds of ammunition. Which we can see here. We can attack Twitter or the Democrats, you pick. I think we can attack either easily. Here are the pipe bombs. The Justice Department said that if convicted, the defendants face a maximum sentence of 20 years in prison, a 3-year term of supervised release, and a $250,000 fine for the conspiracy charge. Yeah, like... But keep in mind, guys, like, there are many people like this out there who are being inspired by Trump's rhetoric and being inspired by feminist nonconforming. I'd agree with you, except that we literally have rhetoric like this
Turning now to this, author
being mainstreamed into the U.S. Political system.
Author Michael Wolff claiming in his new book Landslide that Fox News gleefully brought down Donald Trump. Fox News took glee.
We have networks like Newsmax running stories about this stuff, about how Fox News isn't conservative enough for conservatives anymore.
In shockingly calling Arizona for Joe Biden before any major network, putting an end to Donald Trump's re-election chances. Former President Trump even tweeted,
Tiven, my response is, I want workers to own their workplaces, and that's not an unreasonable ask. We have structures like that in the United States right now. I just want more of them. I don't know why you're being unreasonable about that.
About the situation at the time, saying, quote, the biggest difference between the 2016 election and 2020 was Fox News. So let's bring in our panel for their thoughts on all of this. All right, I want to start off with you, AJ. Kind of an interesting take, sort of a broadside
Good night, public
against
loser.
A cable news behemoth.
Yes, and this was an unfortunate development, even during the election when Fox News was calling states before even CNN or MSNBC in favor of Biden, and they hadn't even confirmed the count. But I think what we're seeing is the takeover that happened with Rupert Murdoch's sons, who are not really conservatives and are more interested in playing nice with the media establishment. And so it's taken a pivot in who its audience is and how it's in its commitment to truth. You know, it used to be that you could tune into Fox and see something that you wouldn't on any other network. You'd be able to see the truth, and so we have to actually hold them accountable that your audience is still conservative and they want to know what's the reality of things. They don't want your spin and they don't want your bias. And playing nice with the media establishment is not worth it.
Stacey, how surprising is this really? And we did learn that Lachlan Murdoch and his wife did contribute some $2 million to Senate Democrats, and I believe to the Biden campaign, to the Buttigieg campaign.
Where does socialism work? Well, in democratic worker co-ops are shown to be quite effective organizational structures for business, and I want more of those. That's it. I want more of those, and I want things like healthcare for everyone, free public education for everyone up to like a master's degree or a PhD in public universities, or at least a 4-year degree, or like I don't know. I want people to be able to have homes if they're homeless, or to be able to eat if they're hungry. I don't know, stuff like that. I think there are reasonable arguments you can make for all of those positions.
That there has been a bit of a change.
I guess my response would be, why do you want people to be homeless? Why do you want people to be starving? Why do you want people to be uneducated? And why do you want people to be dying from medical bills? Like, why do you want those things? Because we can make the choice to not have those things.
Change over at Fox.
Well, I mean, I look at it from the holistic viewpoint, which is I wasn't very happy with the coverage on election night, but they still have Tucker Carlson, who is very conservative, and he does actually take on all of the tough issues, from the vaccine to the deep state, to the fact that he's so good at taking down the establishment that he is being surveilled by the NSA. So I take a holistic approach at it. Hannity is still there. They still have some very strong conservative voices, Gutfeld. So I want more options, not less. It disturbs me that we have MSNBC, CNN, NBC, and then all of the local channels. They're all left-leaning. And then you only have OAN and Newsmax and Fox on the right. Yeah. And those, I mean, obviously the ratings juggernaut has been Fox, and now Newsmax is really, coming on strong. I want to see 4 or 5 really huge conservative networks, because that would reflect an audience in the United States that has critical mass. So we have to do more on the ground. Of course, I'm interested in what people do on television, but my main concern is what Americans are doing on the ground to spread the conservative message, to talk about our Judeo-Christian founding, to help each other, and to create more community and less division, because the left is actually creating a ton of division, and they want to bring that same division from their side to the right. And we are usually much happier, much better looking. We have much more.
I don't know, lady. I recently got highlighted in a subreddit for hot people. I was one of the top-rated people on the subreddit for hot political streamers. Guys, this is my challenge for you. Go on Reddit and make sure everyone knows that I'm a hot political streamer, okay?
So I want to focus on maintaining that and growing that part of our success.
Trey, your thoughts on these comments? It is suggested almost as if this was something from an editorial standpoint. And I was here that night. I was shocked that they called Arizona when they did. We've all been through this before. It was especially with 2000 and how it does change. It can change momentum, particularly for folks that might still be voting. We've certainly seen a shift in Chris Wallace's attitude. He's certainly gone further to the left in terms of the way that he's treating the Biden administration. Your comments on this?
Yeah, I think that you can look at this from an editorial perspective and then broaden it out to whatever kind of business.
What is the Trey Rattle show?
This model, some may be trying there at Fox. Let's look at the editorial. I completely agree with Stacey that, look, there's some great talent on Fox that speaks the truth nightly. But we're looking right now at the newsroom and who is making decisions that election night and not revealing sources.
I do have to say, I love this ongoing narrative from the right about how invalid voting is. Though I'm also afraid of it, right? Like, on the one hand, it's great because I hope that it will suppress voter turnout for conservatives. On the other hand, I'm kind of afraid of it because if you can't turn out to vote to influence elections, that leaves you with only one other option, which is turning out violently. To violently overturn and impose your will, right? So that's kind of the upside and the downside. I'm hoping that all of this coverage suppresses voter turnout on the right, self-inflicted injury over there. But the real worry for me is that it's going to fuel more people like the guys who were going to firebomb the California DNC or Twitter headquarters. That's the real worry for me, that all of these hopeless, disillusioned, sad man-children who've invested, $30,000 into their tactical gear and their AR-15 with all the modifications, just feel like it's their time to become patriots, and they need to find purpose, and their purpose is dying for their god king Donald Trump in order to spark the revolution. I hope that that's not the direction that this all goes in, but it kind of seems like a lot of people on the right are going in that direction. Am I going to cover the white power merch movement? No.
I will tell you that people that I spoke with that next day were very angry. Insiders at Fox were furious with Fox for making that call that early and question it still today. There's still anger and fallout. Let's look at the business side of it, though. I do think that things have changed since the Murdoch sons began to get involved a lot more. And those are valid questions, too, who they're giving money to, what their political leanings are, if they're running this from the top down. But I would ask, what are you thinking? Do you want to go into an oversaturated market with center-left or left-leaning publications, websites, and news channels?
Right, sure.
Because there's plenty of it.
Yeah, and I don't think that, maybe they don't care, because they do have a political, a particular political leaning.
I'm a good streamer.
Some of the Murdoch children. I, for one, am very honored to that. In here,
Sorry.
this is independent media. Nobody calls and tells me, well, you can't be pro-life and pro-faith and pro-freedom on the air. So thank you, panel, for those comments on this. Very provocative. New book, stand by. We're going to be coming right back to you. Newsmax TV has a great app, by the way, and you can use it to watch us anywhere. Just download the free app on your iPhone.
Nah, I don't think I should. I don't think I shall. But of course, Newsmax coverage continues to be absolute dog shit about everything. Like giving out a platform to Matt Gaetz, who decides
the
that
same FBI who ruined the.
He wants to call out the snitching FBI for ruining his career, which, I don't know. Is it really the FBI's fault that Matt Gaetz slept with underage children? Is that really the FBI's fault? I don't know that it is. I don't know that it's the FBI's fault on that one. Moro, this is for you. Yeah.
The life of an innocent man named Joseph Bolanos. He's a registered Democrat who simply appreciated President Trump's policies. The 69-year-old man mostly kept quiet about his politics in his liberal Upper West Side neighborhood of Manhattan, where he was president of his block association for over 2 decades. He attended the Trump speech on January 6th, but got nowhere near the Capitol. In fact, he was watching from a Washington hotel room for most of the riot. Nonetheless, someone tipped off authorities that he was
where was he for the rest of the riot?
There, and the feds stormed his apartment in a pre-dawn raid. They ransacked the place, including the room of his elderly mother, for whom Bolanos cares. And they tipped off local media so that the story was broadcast live on local New York television. While handcuffed in FBI custody for 4 hours, Bolanos suffered a stress-induced stroke. Now, he was never charged, mainly because he did nothing wrong. But he still told the New York Post that the events, quote, destroyed my reputation.
I do have to say, it is sad that he had a stress-induced stroke. But also, I don't know, I have very little sympathy for this story.
If the FBI gets its way, there will be many, many more Joseph Bolanos-style victims out there. Everyday people.
Oh, now the conservatives are worried about some kind of secret police. Now they're worried about some kind of, group of people who can just break into buildings and spirit people away to camps. But they don't care about it if it's, immigrants.
Who are persecuted by the vast powers of federal law enforcement simply for having the wrong politics.
Well, joining us now to discuss the FBI and its tactics, Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz. Congressman, great to have you on the program tonight.
Oh, thanks for having me, Jen.
So you sit here and you listen.
Yeah, I wonder what Matt Gaetz might have against the FBI.
Steve's monologue. Steve and I are on this America First program, have to wonder if we might be spied on. And what's to say that they're not looking at our audience out there as well?
Here's what we know. The FBI is not getting better, they're getting worse. During the Russia hoax, we exposed the fact that the FBI was using its power to push its politics on the country and to try to achieve more power by getting rid of their critics. Now we see that since there wasn't accountability as a result of the Russia hoax at the scale that there should have been, they're getting even more ambitious, and they're targeting even more Americans like those Steve mentioned. And this harkens to a darker day, Jen. I mean, back during the worst days of the Soviet Union, 1 out of every 3 of the folks in that country was providing some sort of information to a centralized governing authority. And so snitching really is a tool of the repressive.
Oh yeah, Parkside Twan. I totally forgot about that. Like a few years ago, lefties like who were out protesting peacefully were just getting like arrested randomly by people in unmarked black vans. And conservatives like just leapt to defend that. Holy moly, I forgot about that.
Security state, and we don't want that to happen in our country.
Last year was 4 years ago.
Congressman, I want to ask you about the reaction of Rick Grinnell, the former DNI of the United States. He was reacting to that terrible tweet put out by the FBI, and here's what Rick Grinnell had to say. He said, "This is outrageous. The FBI has a growing credibility problem, and this type of sinister snitching is clearly..."
Wait, why do I care who Rick Grinnell is? Why do I care what this man has to say about anything?
Unhelpful. Why hasn't the FBI made more progress finding the BLM rioters from last summer? Why hasn't the FBI leadership apologized for the Russia hoax they pushed?
I mean, part of this is because people who were out doing riotous things during BLM wore masks, and people who went to the Capitol building, like, proudly displayed their entire first, last, and middle name along with their social security number. Like, yeah, it's a bit easier. Also, the BLM rioters didn't attack the Capitol of the fucking United States.
So, Congressman, I'd like your reaction to Rick Grinnell, and also to know if you agree with him that it seems as though the FBI is totally focused in the wrong places.
Yeah, I do, and Rick Grinnell's point shows the actual cost of the...
Yeah, I do think the FBI's focused on unfortunate issues like child sex trafficking and underage pedophilia specifically by members of Congress. I do think that, yes. Not for any personal reasons, just because it seems like the FBI might be out to get someone named Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz, a good friend of mine in the Senate.
The FBI being so misaligned in their priorities. When the FBI is busy trying to make us all believe that our family members and our neighbors are extremists, we miss the opportunity to actually dig into important threats, cybersecurity threats, national security threats.
I know all about cybering. I cybered all the time with this hot little 16-year-old. Oh dear. Why, my friend Matt Gaetz, he talked with one of my favorite friends who happens to be a pimp. And that pimp got him in contact with a woman of questionable age. Now, of course, I, as a reasonable senator, would never associate with a woman whose age I had not personally verified.
That they should be focused on, and it's really rich as a Floridian to hear the FBI say, well, if you'll just call us more about your extremist family members, then we'll spring into action. Because when the FBI was called about the specific actions, the specific training of the Parkland shooter from a neighbor, they totally dropped the ball. And so now this isn't really a sincere effort to engage in law enforcement. This is an effort to identify people.
Wait, why is he talking about the
politics.
Parkland shooting? I missed something there.
Specific training of the Parkland Floridian to hear the FBI say, well, if you'll just call us more about your extremist family members, then we'll spring into action. Because when the FBI was called about the specific actions, the specific training of the Parkland shooter from a neighbor, they totally dropped the ball. And so now this isn't really a sincere effort to engage in law.
Wait, are conservatives not pro teaching children how to shoot guns anymore? I didn't know Jack was a senator. No. You don't understand. I, Matt Gaetz, was the victim of this circumstance. The FBI set me up. Yeah, it was all plants.
Enforcement. This is an effort to identify people based on their politics, and I don't think we want an FBI that is resolving familial disputes through the lens of extremism. That seems to really take them away from an otherwise important mission.
Congressman, I think most Americans want to think that the intel community does not have a political agenda. We saw with James Comey, he had a political agenda with Trump. Should most Americans now, be concerned that perhaps the FBI does have a political agenda?
When did the FBI not have a political agenda? I mean, let's remember who the building's named after. J. Edgar Hoover would use information in a compromising way against politicians and people to be able to maintain his own power. And then you saw the FBI
Against which people, Matt Gaetz? Which people was J. Edgar Hoover using his power against? Can you refresh any of us, Matt? Matt, can you refresh us who Hoover was using his power against? I wonder, Matt, was it persecuting people on the left? Because I think it was, Matt. I think that's exactly who they were persecuting. That's not the gotcha you think it is.
really weaponized against elements of the civil rights movement in the 50s and 60s, and now you see
Okay, hear me out. Bring Chris Hansen back for one last episode and catch Matt Gaetz in the act. Oh, I would love to see Matt Gaetz poop his pants on live television.
FBI really becoming the enforcement wing of the Democratic Party in a lot of circumstances. The interconnectivity between the FBI, the liars in the mainstream media, present company of course excluded, and really
Oh no, 100% Malamin say. Conservatives loved the fact that the FBI was going after people on the left for the vast majority of its history. One Republican president attempts a coup, and all of a sudden the FBI is investigating.
You know, the power centers of Washington, D.C. should trouble all of us. And the problem now is without Trump around, they're not targeting him as much as they're targeting regular Americans who engage in lawful activity. And if they can't find you, they want your own family members to report you. That I don't think the FBI really knows what they're asking for here. It's going to erode their ability to do important work, and it's going to entangle them in all kind of nonsense.
And if you're involved with Antifa or BLM rioters, of course, they'll look the other way.
Well, and that is reflected when Christopher Wray comes to testify before Congress. He spends all this time talking about the great ills and threats of white supremacy and extremism. And he says these things as the BLM and Antifa rioters are actually taking action that results in a great deal of death and destruction and harm in our country. It's more a woketopia than it is a law enforcement entity.
Yeah, if only we had some kind of organization that could crack down on all these radical leftists. You know, something that would investigate them. You know, something like I don't know, like a bureau of like a division of our government dedicated to investigating, you know, those radical liberals, those radical members of the left. You know, those BLM no good nicks. You know, just like J. Edgar Hoover, who was head of a division that was specifically called the Radical Division, that was designed to investigate and take out radical dissidents towards the American public. You know, but specifically, no one had a problem with that at the time because it was leftists who were being targeted. So I guess that makes it okay.
Matt, I want to ask you about your personal situation with federal law enforcement.
Please do. I would love to hear him say what his personal situation is.
Of course, there's a lot of innuendo and rumor and speculation. I want to give you the chance to speak to it here directly to the people of your district and the people of America. And also, you can speak about it broadly, but also specifically if you believe you have been targeted for political reasons by federal law enforcement.
Well, I'll put it this way, Steve. I don't think anybody at the Department of Justice or FBI thinks the way to make their career is to actually make the case against people like Hunter Biden or their associates. I think instead there's a desire to obtain political scalps. We see that with Rudy Giuliani. We saw that with Michael Flynn, and perhaps that's the case with me as well. I'll let the facts bear out. And, you know, right now as I chat with you, gosh,
Gosh, Matt Gaetz, I find it very curious that you're not saying, I did not have sex with an underage girl, and instead are saying people want to take your political scalp, but you're not outright denying that you did anything.
New York Times and CNN and everything they've all tried to smear me and take me out of the Congress, but I'm still fighting for my constituents, and I'm still serving on the Oversight Committee for the FBI.
Congressman Matt Gaetz, thank you so much for
Wow, it sounds like you're not doing a very good job after all the shit you just talked about the FBI.
joining us tonight.
Thank you, guys.
You just watched Newsmax TV.
Newsmax is such a weird, like, alternate reality.
Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas made headlines.
I really want to see the fascist justification for accepting Cuban refugees, but denying refugees from other countries.
U.S. Coast Guard headquarters yesterday when he told Cuban refugees not to come here.
Story
Protesters are
girl,
out
my
for the
Friday's
fourth straight
good.
day, fed up with their
We're doing one shot for every 5 gift subs, so I'm a bit toasted right now, but it's been a while since I had a shot, so we're doing good, and we're doing politics. It's a good time.
country's inflation, medical shortages, and of course the communist regime. But the Cubans are attempting to escape actual persecution, unlike the migrants at our southern border. Yet we've been letting...
How are you coming to that conclusion? How? How are you coming to that conclusion?
to come here. Protesters are out for the fourth straight day, fed up with their country's inflation, medical shortages, and of course the communist regime. But the Cubans are attempting to escape actual persecution, unlike the migrants at our southern border.
Citation fucking needed. Like, the reason you can apply for refugee status is if you fear for your life in your home country. Meaning that these people come here and say, hey, I fear for my life in my home country. And then they need to go in front of a judge and prove it. Like, I'm sorry, dipshits on Newsmax don't get to decide who is and is not persecuted in their home country. The courts do. Story girl, this is for you. Yeah. They're ethnically cleansing the Ixil Maya. Yeah, I've heard about that, but I don't know much about it.
Yet we've been letting them
They
in
don't
with
know what the
open
word
arms and at
citation
record
means.
numbers. Last I checked, none of them are going through any asylum process before being flown to U.S. and to cities across the U.S. Now, joining us now is someone who's had a personal connection to all of this.
You know, Link himself. Here's my hot take. I don't think she's actually that hot. The like overly tanned, overly blonde look does not appeal to me.
Florida State Senator Ileana Garcia. Senator, thanks so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having me.
Could you share with our viewers your personal
She pretty though.
connection and also perhaps what you see being covered in the media that perhaps is missing from this story here?
Well, I'll tell you that it is a very tragic situation, what we're watching happen in our mother country, even though our mother country now is the United States of America, where you are watching how communism, socialism is really rolling out. And it's very interesting to see how Bernie Sanders has had nothing to say about it. Neither has AOC. So we're seeing what would happen in the worst case scenario. If we ever roll that out here, it would roll out as socialism.
I'm pretty sure if you asked if AOC or Bernie Sanders would be comfortable with Cuban refugees being accepted to the United States, they'd say, sure, but also the people at the southern border should be accepted into the United States too if we're taking a bunch of refugees in.
It will become communism, and then we would have voted it in, and then we will fight our way out. So what we're watching is a Cuban against another Cuban, all because of an ideology. So there's scarcity of food, there's scarcity of medicine, there is nothing but a lot of pain right now. When you watch people fighting each other over ideology, or because the government is actually going out and making people fight amongst each other. So one of the things that we've been watching lately is the military come in and sequester young children and saying either you hand them over to us to protect our system, or we will kill you, or we will kill them. So it's
What? None of that made sense to me.
Right.
It's really interesting watching how it's all playing out, and then at the same time watching the hypocrisy at the board.
Okay, first off, I recognize that Cubans in America are capitalist shills, but can we not use the word gusano? I've been told that it is a slur. I know that some people disagree with that, but I'd rather just not have that in chat.
Border that I had the honor at a given moment of watching.
The same way, like, trap isn't technically a slur for, like, the trans community, but I'd rather not have it in my chat.
Function correctly under the Trump administration.
Right. Senator Garcia, you're so right. There are some really harrowing images and videos coming out of Cuba of those young people literally being dragged out of their homes by authorities.
Or just call them what they are. You don't need to call people worms or cockroaches. You don't need to, like, dehumanize the enemy. You can just call them what they are. Capitalist shills.
But, I want to ask you here about the U.S. reaction.
I didn't even know what the word meant, like, 3 days ago.
From the White House, because today, Jen Psaki...
Exactly, redacted. Exactly. Or twerps. Twerps is another good one. Chaos7, thank you for the follow.
Was asked about the situation in Cuba, and she used the term mismanagement.
It's not a racial, it's a class insult. Well, then just use a different class insult. You can call them rich capitalist shills. I don't care. I would just avoid using that word. Asshats, rich fucks, stuff like that. Why not call them what they fucking are? That's my argument. My argument is to call them exactly what they are. Rich capitalist fucks.
When she said, why are people protesting? Why do they want to flee Cuba? She said that the island is being mismanaged. Now, look, Baltimore is being mismanaged, okay? But Baltimore is not communist. Cuba's not being mismanaged. It is a communist dictatorship. Why is Jen Psaki, why Joe Biden, why are the Democrats afraid to...
Fuck. I really don't care enough about this discourse. I just don't want people using what appear to be slurs in my chat, okay?
Correctly describe what the reality is of the Havana regime.
Because I think that the mindset has been with this administration to once again open relations with Cuba. It is the mindset. It is the left mentality that they coddle each other, and that for some reason they think that by extending them or helping them in any which way, shape, or form, that the community is actually going to benefit from it. And it doesn't. The money goes right back to the government. All you do is continue to enable a transnational cartel that calls itself a government. And by the way, let me tell you something about the Cuban regime. It is the epicenter of everything that we see tragic in Central and South America.
Look, let me put it this way. I'm too white to use ambiguous racial slurs, okay? I am too white to use words that may or may not be racial slurs that I don't understand enough to use them, and I cannot condone them on my platform because I'm actively too white.
You're watching the ideology roll out because of the modern day slavery established by the Cuban.
So if it's anyone's fault that you can't use that word in my chat, it's me, because I'm too white and too stupid to know otherwise, okay? There we go.
Where they have been the pros at rolling out free healthcare, ordaining people, telling them what to study, what to do, where to go. They are the Communist Manifesto at its best. So when you see what's going on at the border, think to yourself that a lot of that has been perpetrated and has been organized by the Cuban regime from the island. And it's worked its way into Nicaragua, and that's why we still have Ortega, and it has orchestrated its way into all of
this is all nonsense, by the way, which is why I haven't really been listening super closely. Like, everything that she's saying right now is just not true.
These countries that have had very poor governance, that think that capitalism, imperialism, as they call it, is a terrible thing, and that governance under a group of small rich people.
What channel is it? This is Newsmax.
And is a lot better.
Senator, a lot of folks
she's a fucking senator.
Looking also to the progressive wing of the Democrat Party, look at the Squad, AOC. They've been largely silent on what's happening in Cuba. Do you think perhaps that's because in some sense what's happening there is what they envision for the U.S. in terms of sort of a communist state?
Definitely so. You're watching it roll out. I mean, remember that the Democratic Party has an out-of-the-closet communist, Bernie Sanders. Can't deny that. And AOC as well, Democratic Socialist. Just Google it. You're always a Google away from getting a little brighter. So I think that they're staying away from it. Sure. They're being very smart strategically for re-election purposes next year, perhaps, to stay away from the reality of what we're seeing here in Cuba right now. And not just in Cuba. We watched it roll out in Venezuela. We've actually been very, very fortunate that the media has taken it on.
Venezuela was never even really a socialist country. Like, the argument here is just really weird.
Objectively. And we really hope that for all intensive purposes, if you really care about freedom and rights and you are about social justice, this isn't about...
Link himself, I know that she's lying. I'm well aware. I've stated that multiple times.
Republican or Democrat, this is about freedom right now. 62 years of oppression, people killing each other over an ideology. This is not about the embargo. This is not about...
Are you sure it's not about the embargo, though? Are you sure it's not about the modern history's longest running embargo of any nation on Earth? Are you sure it's not about how economically a giant pandemic and cutting ties with Cuba's nearest largest trading partner might negatively impact an entire country? Are you sure it's not about that? Are you sure it has nothing to do with the fact that there is an embargo on this country that has been universally condemned by every single nation on Earth, minus 5 for the last 20 years? Goodness.
About COVID vaccines. This is about the end of socialism and communism as we know it.
Ileana, I want to also ask you about the dichotomy, the differences that...
what I would like to see is the end of authoritarianism in Cuba. I'd like to see that. But that would be nice. Yeah. Just gonna leave it at that.
Ways in which we are treating the economic migrants at our southern border with Mexico versus...
No, Jack, it's about me and my Uncle Heinrich's old factory and his slaves, happy workers that got taken from him. I am disabled and in hospital bed at my mother's, and they are just trying to ship us both off to a home? Trill South, I'm sorry to hear that. Oh, sure, nonsense password. It's not really feasible with the United States being here, and being as hostile to Cuba as it is. But, if they were able to overthrow the kind of the authoritarianism, I think that would be a fantastically positive change for the well-being of Cubans and for the well-being of socialism in the world.
Legitimate refugees from Cuba, because DHS Secretary Mayorkas, he literally said to Cubans who are the very definition of asylum seekers, because they are fleeing persecution from an oppressive regime. He said, "Do not come here. You will not be."
What about people fleeing oppression from the gang violence or the drug wars or the cartels, or people who are fleeing the oppression of their authoritarian governments that are being propped up by the United States?
Allowed into the United States. At the same time, he is welcoming Central Americans who, yes, come from tough places, but from functioning democracies like Honduras and El Salvador, and they are being welcomed with open arms.
By the way, I love how Newsmax will talk about how we don't live in a functional democracy anymore, but they'll be talking about how Honduras and El Salvador have functional democracies. Well, great. Then all conservatives can just emigrate to Honduras and El Salvador. Clearly this is a hostile country to them, and the elections are oppressive, and Joe Biden is essentially a dictator in their eyes. So feel free to go off to El Salvador or Honduras, okay?
What do you say about that divergence, and what do you think explains that totally disparate treatment?
Well, the total hypocrisy of this administration. I don't think that we've seen numbers like this since the previous time that Biden worked for the administration while he was working with his buddy Obama. Same thing with unaccompanied minors. My understanding, I was looking at the numbers over at over for CBP, and you've got 500 unaccompanied minors a week. That is tragic. So it's one hypocrisy after the next, and it's definitely something that people need to pay attention to and take it to the next election.
Understood. Ileana Garcia, thank you so much for being here this evening.
Thank you. Thanks for the both of you. Thank you.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, we're real news.
Newsmax, we're real news, I promise. Don't be duped by our cheap logo and lighting. We're real news, I promise. And we got one
President
more.
Biden is facing
We got one more clip about how AOC thinks America's evil.
New pressure over the situation in Cuba, this time from Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr. They're both calling on the president to get internet access into Cuba, where it's been cut off by communist leadership, to silence dissent and prevent the spread of information. Commissioner Carr says the process can begin as soon as it receives authorization. Joining us now to discuss is the host of the Matt Walsh Show on...
I'm sure that Matt Walsh, based YouTube creator and author and Catholic fascist, is going to have some pretty great things to say about Cuba.
The Daily Wire, Matt Walsh. Matt, good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, not surprisingly, she finally broke her silence on Cuba, and of course she's slamming the United States and the U.S.-Cuba policy. Take a listen.
And what's extraordinarily important for us to communicate as well is the actions and U.S. contributions to the suffering of Cubans on the island as well. And that is directly related to the embargo, the U.S. embargo, economic embargo that is frankly has been in place for over 60 years. The embargo, the U.S. embargo, is absurdly cruel.
All right, Matt, I'll turn it over to you. Not a surprising comment from her. We've had a debate about the embargo in this country for a very long time. But do you feel that the administration is doing enough to be supportive of these dissidents in Cuba?
No, probably not. I mean, and this from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. We have to understand that this is the opinion that she's ideologically beholden to, because from her perspective as a leftist, a member of the leftist religion, part of the dogma there is that the United States is the center of all the evil in the world, and so everything has to be our fault one way or another. And obviously, she's also going to be very reluctant to criticize a communist government, which is one of the reasons why I know there are a lot of, many Republicans have come out aggressively against the communist government in Cuba, which I think is great because I oppose them as well. But I think we should be just as aggressive about the left-wing communist takeover of our own country, of which Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is a part. That to me should be our primary focus.
It's interesting though, because she's blaming us for the conditions there, but Cuba's closest allies.
I'm very confused by this already.
Russia and China, which are authoritarian, socialist, if not communist, countries. So any failure there in Cuba is proof positive that her ideology does not work, because they should, under her logic, they should have all that they need as a country. They shouldn't need the United States at all, right?
Well, they shouldn't, and we know this. This is one of the.
Yeah, why would a country need the economic support of their closest trading partner to survive a pandemic that has devastated the global economy?
Best arguments, if anyone on the other side cared about facts or anything, then this should be an argument.
Also, it's true, guys. You heard it here first. Breaking news. Modern-day Russia is a socialist state. Definitely not some kind of plutarchic system. Don't look into it.
That's pretty persuasive to them, which is you say that communism works. Well, show me where it has, because
has this guy been frozen for a century?
You look all throughout the world today and throughout history. You see nothing but death and despair and misery, and that's what you find. That's what you find with communism. You know, in fact, Nicole Hannah-Jones of 1619 fame, she was on a podcast that resurfaced recently where she said that in Cuba they have equality. She said that a few years ago, and she's right in the fact that there is equality in Cuba and that everyone is poor and oppressed, and that's the kind of equality you get under a communist regime.
Yeah,
you can actually find people in the protests screaming about how they love socialism, but they hate, and how capitalism will never return to Cuba, but how they hate the authoritarianism. You can literally find people who are protesting against the regime because they love socialism and hate the authoritarianism. Literally, they'll tell you the reason why. We don't need, like, this Catholic fascist to, like, scry into his crystal to, like, discern the reason. Like, he has as much idea about what's going on as, like, one of these books on the shelves, okay?
We're all equally oppressed. President Biden is also speaking out, denouncing communism in...
Wait, no, you're an inexperienced girly boy that wants everything free. Oh, I was reading it. Okay, I can still read it. Wants everything free and people... Well, wait, no. I don't want everything free. I just want to eliminate the ability to coerce people into doing things they don't want to do. And people will skip together down the yellow brick road. Unicorns fart and glitter. You need to quit your judgmental crap. Wait, you're the one judging me on positions that I haven't expressed. Remember, you don't like shills? Well, then quit acting like a little bitch. You have fun in a prison? Wait, why am I going to prison? Wait, what? When the socialist cut you off? Why am I going to prison for the socialist cutoff? Because they won't allow freedom of speech? Well, yeah, that's why I've been saying throughout this entire segment that I hate authoritarianism and how the Cubans are protesting against authoritarianism. Because I like freedom of speech and I like democracy. I just want democracy in my workplace, which is something I have said multiple times specifically to you. It will be you that will be whining when shit goes down. What shit? What shit is going down? I really want to know. I wish these people were more coherent so that I could like talk with them and like actually understand what they're trying to say. Like I want to know what this person thinks, but I know that if I ask just a simple question to this person, they're gonna go and write like half a novel that has nothing to do with the question I asked. The incoherence is what makes them indestructible. True. It is big of me to try and make sense out of them, yeah. I am doing a public service. That's why you guys all watch me and subscribe and support my work and make me drunk on nights when I have 5 subs for a shot. On that note, give me money so that I can get more drunk, please.
Perhaps the softest of terms. Take a listen.
Communism is a failed system, universally failed system. And I don't see socialism as a very useful substitute.
Not a very useful substitute. Again, I think I don't know if he was reading that from the teleprompter that somebody wrote for him or what. But again, I get the sense that there is an opportunity here to
exactly, Paladin Lost. I want people to have as much freedom as possible. Freedom of speech, freedom of work, freedom of occupation, things like that. Things that you cannot experience in capitalism unless you are absurdly wealthy.
To support what's going on in Cuba, and this administration it doesn't really seem to know what to do about it.
Yeah, because again, a communist government, those are not supposed to be the villains that we're focused on. This is the last conversation that Joe Biden wants to have. I think saying socialism is not useful is about the faintest criticism you could possibly offer of something, or even to call it a failed system, which it is. But I think that's a calculated criticism also, because all you're doing then is you're criticizing the end result, right? And so that leaves open the possibility that, well, it hasn't worked so far, but maybe it'll work in the future, which is what you hear from people.
True.
Who are communist apologists in this country. They say, it hasn't really, no one has really tried the real thing. It's not just that communism has failed.
But also, Matt, like I love this. I love this. On the one hand, they'll be like, yeah, socialists and communists will tell you that it's never really been tried before. So, like, you can't judge it based on the real world examples. And on the other hand, they'll be like, and yeah, like communists and socialists will say that real communism hasn't ever actually happened. But like, it'd be real nice if these people would look up what socialism is or what communism is. It'd be nice if they would look up like Marx and read Marx at all. Like, to come to the conclusion about, like, a labor theory of value and how, like, hey, the real critique here isn't, like, creating an authoritarian dictatorship. The critique here is, hey, what if we just democratically owned businesses? That's the big critique of Marx. That's it. That's it. In a nutshell. What if we democratically owned businesses? It's not, like, completely outside of the pale, beyond the pale, however that phrase goes. It's a real simple idea. What if we just worked together with the people we worked with and owned the business together and made the business decisions together? And if you look at that simple idea and you look at any of the instances of what has claimed to be socialism or communism in the world, none of them had the workers democratically owning their workplaces. None of them. Soviet Union? No. North Korea? No. China? No. Venezuela? No. Cuba? I don't know enough about Cuba's economy, but at the end of the day, their authoritarian regime is not democratic, and I condemn them for that. Yugoslavia? Yes. Yugoslavia, only valid example, okay? Yugoslavia, only valid example. I don't like Joseph Tito. I don't like his secret police, but I do like the market socialism. I think it was extremely successful. And people who say it wasn't rarely point out that the reason the country fell into economic collapse wasn't because of the market socialism. It was because they based their economy off of three main goods, and all three of them failed along with the fall of the Soviet Union around the same time. So literally, they just, like, got completely fucked over all in the course of, like, 3 years. So, like, not a failure of the system, but the externalities of capitalism to that system.
Though it is, it's also that it's evil. And so in that sense, actually, it doesn't fail. I would argue, in fact, that the result we see in Cuba...
Exactly, Erkt. Exactly. We just want people to have the control over their lives that capitalists currently have over their workers' lives.
Is the point with communism, so when you look at it in another way, it actually has not failed at all. It's done exactly what it intended.
Also, guys, if we get 3 more follows, we'll hit 3,600 followers for the week, which will be pretty goddamn good.
To do.
And he also seems to be continuing to use COVID as an excuse for what's going on in Cuba, just as in a very, very narrow sense. Take a listen to his comments here.
They have a COVID problem in Cuba. I would be prepared to give significant amounts of vaccine if, in fact, I was assured an international organization would administer those vaccines and do it in a way that average citizens would have access to those vaccines.
So he still thinks that this is about coronavirus, Matt, and that's really disturbing to me. He seems to focus everything, it doesn't matter what it is, domestic policy, foreign policy, it's either on COVID or climate change. Do you think he really thinks that this is about coronavirus instead of oppression, or is that just an excuse for trying to offer some form of faint aid that won't actually do anything about the regime there in Cuba?
Yeah, I'm actually surprised that he hasn't blamed that he hasn't blamed climate change yet. Maybe we'll hear that next. Maybe somebody already has tied this into climate change. I'm sure somebody has.
Thanks, Adam Rainstop.
You're right. It's COVID. It's climate change. These are the things we go to. I don't think that he actually thinks that. I'm not sure that Joe Biden thinks anything at all these days. But no, I don't believe he actually believes that. But COVID is another convenience tool that the powers that be have, as we've seen over the last year. And as long as it's around.
Well, and the thing is, like, Yugoslavia was ostensibly a democracy. They just kept electing Joseph Tito, because he was like a goddamn war hero. Legends Sword 55. Yeah. And Juan Comunista Cubano, thank you very much for the follow. You're welcome, Legend Sword. Yeah, I look, I'm just not a fan of authoritarianism in any form. I can recognize that, hey, maybe that was the better option between, like, genocide and ethnic cleansing, but, like, yo, even so, try and find a better way than becoming an authoritarian dictator with, like, a secret police force at your beck and call, like, disappearing people. Moro, this is for you. Oh, Mommy. Daddy. I've unbanned Tiveno, okay? Seemed really genuine in the unban request. Good night, Entroma. Get good sleep. That dude Zoot, you've been around for a bit now. You deserve a subby if somebody has subby money to throw around. All right, let's do this.
In any capacity, they are going to use that tool for sure.
Yeah. You know, we've talked a lot about this week. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas is under fire over his message to Cuban and also Haitian refugees attempting to flee their countries.
Moro, thank you for gifting a sub to that dude Zoot. Try and find a better way, but is it worth the risk of genocide? I'm not sure. I'm glad it's a decision I don't have to make. True. Don't give me anything, donate the sub money to the channel. Too late.
The crisis there, and he said, if you take to the sea, do not come to the United States. How tone deaf do you believe it was to say to Haitians and Cubans that can't come, but it's...
By the way, I love how they will simultaneously be like, oh, this was monstrous. But then be like, yes, Queen, Kamala, tell him not to come. You're not doing enough, and you're still a bitch, but tell him not to come. Yes, Queen. Like, get out of here.
It seems to be okay for people from like 100 other countries to stream across the Mexican border.
Oh, Moro, I appreciate it, though.
It's a total double standard. Now, if you wanted to take
Hola, Juan.
an absolute hardline, absolutist position, and that's your message to everyone, we don't want anyone coming here illegally, then fine. I would have no problem with that personally. If that is the consistent hardline message that you're taking, But that's not it at all. These are the only people. This is the only group that the Biden administration doesn't want.
Coming here to request asylum isn't illegal, actually. We can tell people not to come, but it's not illegal to come and request asylum. It's not illegal to enter the United States and go and say, hey, I would like to request asylum. Like, that's not an illegal thing to do.
Coming, and I think that should probably tell you everything you need to know.
All right, Matt Walsh, our friend from the Daily Wire. He's also the
Paladin.
author of
I do
Church
like being
of
called
Cowards.
a good girl.
Thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget.
I felt like it was important to go through kind of what Newsmax is presenting to the world. Especially because they're literally too far right to be, like, called conservative. They're pushing fucking, like, Fox News to the right by blaming the 2020 election loss on Fox News's biased leftist coverage. Like, that what we just watched was a bunch of fascist propaganda, and it's really, really disturbing because it's working.